All right, so now I'm going to talk about two particular films that I would recommend that people do seek out. Right, those would be "You Won't Be Alone" and "3,000 Years of Longing." Right.
Right.
Now, what I will say right off the bat is that they're not gonna be everyone's cup of tea, right? They fall within the art film crowd,
Right.
right?
Okay.
It's within that niche, if you will, right? So yeah, people, me kind of look at these things as artsy fartsy, but I think that there's a lot of not goodness but greatness in both films, right?
Right.
Now the funny thing is with You Won't Be Alone, which I'm gonna kick things off with, right, is that I saw the trailer for this months ago, right, on Facebook. And right off the bat, like I just looked at it because they said new folk horror and whatnot, right? And because I was just on this folk horror high because of the documentary that
Right.
we
Yeah.
reviewed, Woodlands Dark and Days Bewitched, right? So it's like, all right, somebody putting out a new folk horror. I want to see what it is. I saw the trailer fit, right? And I think, well, it's one of those trailers where they just show you a lot of imagery, and they just give you all the it was a big hit at TIFF and Sundance and blah blah blah, and all these reviews and all that kind of stuff. And one of them was saying something along the line is as great as The Witch. It's like,
Okay. Yeah.
okay,
I like that.
okay,
That I like.
all right. But don't quote me on this, right? It's almost kind of compared it to The Witch now, because in essence, this show is, well, yeah, it's about witches, right? So what's about, right? It's set actually in Macedonia, right, 19th century, right? And we meet this peasant woman, right? And one day she is confronted by a witch, right? But what they call her is a wolf eatress, right?
Mm.
Which is a really weird term, but that's what they go for because, well, surprise, surprise, she does turn into a wolf, but that that is only happened like a few times. That's all I'll say, right? So yeah, the wolf eatress pretty much, well, her name is Maria, right? Confronts her, right? And I forgot to mention the person actually has a baby daughter, right? And she pretty much wants to, well, the mother assumes that Maria wants to feed on her, right? But actually what the witch does is kind of scrape her underneath her neck, right?
Right.
And pretty much says that how it works there is that, like, once you get scratched now, then that mean that person will eventually become just like her, right? That's kind of the rules of the world of this movie here, right?
Right.
Although to be
Kind of vampire rules a little bit.
well, yeah, more of a werewolf in a sense, but yeah,
Right.
in a
Right.
sense
Okay.
like vampiric in a sense, right? So the mom being all scared of what that she hides her daughter in this cave, right? And then, well, years pass, and I believe she's like a young woman. She's like about I believe she's about 18 or thereabout, right? And then Maria shows up again, and the mother disappears, right? Well, her mom actually disappears, right? So Navina, that's her name, right? Navina, right? Pretty much is adopted by Maria, right? And together they just kind of traverse the land now. And while they're moving about and whatnot, typical, because one thing I really like about the show here is that they kind of compare the relationship to that of like an actual wolf and her cubs, right? So
Right.
yeah, I mean, Maria is kind of showing her how to feed, right? So they kind of go for big game and whatnot, and she kind of like slaps her, and she pretty much gets aggressive at Navina if she does anything wrong, right? And then, well, Navina is just like, you know what, I done with this, I don't need you anymore. She pretty much kind of casts her away, right? And Maria's like, all right, cool. If you think you could live your life on your own, fine, go right on ahead, right? So she leaves her, right? And from here, we just kind of follow Navina as she pretty much learns about the world around her, right? What happens, and this is it's not really so much a gimmick, but it's how the story progresses. Is that she would run into someone, and she's kind of fascinated by this someone, right? So also I forgot to mention too is that it relies a lot on voiceover narration, because what happened is that Davina, because she was scratched, right, under the neck, she doesn't speak. She's practically mute, right? And it's never stated whether she can speak or if it is that she just kind of chooses to stay that way. But throughout the film, she just doesn't say a word, right? But it's just basically through body language, all that kind of stuff, right? And through the voiceover narration, right? So yeah, so essentially she's just kind of walking around from village to village. She confronts people, but when she's fascinated with someone, she attacks them. And then what she does the same scratch thing, right? But then after what she does is that she literally kind of takes their skin, right? Like removes their skin, right?
Right.
And then becomes that person itself.
Okay. Skin.
Is a
We call it,
narrative.
let's call that boy Skinwalker. Is that what term for that? I think that's a Skinwalker.
I think so. Yeah. Right. And it's just basically like a narrative technique they use to kind of move the story along. So she'll always assume different identities. So she would be a man one day, or she'll be a little girl, or she will be a woman. There's
Right.
one point where she was actually a dog, and she just kind of like realized, okay, I don't want to be a dog. Like literally, she doesn't want to be a dog, and she just decided to become someone else, right? And throughout her experiences, she learns about the world around her. She really learns a lot about the whole patriarchal system at the time. She
Right.
learns about her womanhood and, you know, sex and all that kind of stuff. And it's just essentially a coming of age story about a witch. That essentially what it is, who just so happens to be able to, you know, assume different forms and whatnot. While all this is going on now, Maria continues to observe her from a distance. Ever so often she will kind of confront her, and at the time, and you know, during the instances that she does confront her, she's amazed at, you know, like, how are you learning so much? And because it's kind of set up that she just wants to be all alone, right? She just wants to be a loner, right? And she's just surprised that Davina actually interacts with people, and, you know, just be, you know, actually not so much communicate, but she's actually like being around people. You know what I mean? She's not kind of taking her, you know, abilities as some kind of excuse to be a loner, right? She's actually kind of interacting with people. And I'll stop right there, right? So, in terms of it being better or as great as The Witch, I would say no. And this is coming from somebody
Right.
who totally adores and loves The Witch, right? But the show, to be fair, is not trying to be The Witch, right? It's trying to be its own thing, right? And for what it is, I thought that this was solid, man. It's very unique, it's very special, very different. It does fall within the, you know, the art film niche, right? But
Right.
and it's not too like avant-garde or too artsy. You know what I mean? Like the premise is pretty much straightforward once you lock into what's going on. Once you understand how the narrative moves, you know what I mean, especially from character to character, it will make a lot of sense. And especially with the themes that they talk about here, right? And because the show relies a lot on voiceover narration, you kind of have to kind of trust the word of, you know, the character herself, right? But the thing is, the way how she talks, how best to describe it? It's very poetic. It's very kind of scattered, the way how she talks, very broken sentences and whatnot. It's a weird way that she communicates now, how she talks to the audience. But it kind of works in terms of like you understanding her headspace, where she's at, right?
Right.
Because again, she's experiencing things for the first time, and she's like, you know, almost like amazed, but at the same time, kind of shocked at the same time too, right? Also because, you know, because of what they were going for in terms of the setup and whatnot, I did know, I knew going in that they were going to touch on, you know, gender roles and all that kind of stuff, and they do
Right.
that as well, right? Okay, yeah, she kind of learns a lot about, you know, masculinity, and, you know, just about men not treating women right and all that kind of stuff,
Right.
and, you know, it's to the point that she actually assumes the role of a man and kind of understands how that is, right? And then actually she kind of learns about, you know, sex and all that kind of stuff, right? So she kind of learns about the ins and outs about being a human, and that's essentially what the show's about, right? Does it fall into the genre of horror? Yes, it does, right? There are some bloody images, some flat out disturbing imagery here or there, right? But at the same time, it's not like the most shocking movie you will ever see in your life, though. Like I've seen way more shocking things. Like just the other day we saw Men. Like the climax of Men still gives me chills, right? But we don't get a moment like that, you know what I mean? I actually thought he was gonna get stuff like that the moment that the show can establish about the whole skinwalker aspect of the character, but like no, not really. Like it's mostly done off camera, but you do get the gist of what's going on, which is and that's enough, right? Performances I thought were solid. The only person I really noticed was Nomi Rapace. Yeah, she's in this, right?
Okay,
yeah, she shows up as one. Yeah, exactly. And she was in Lamb
Right,
last year.
right. I forget what. Right, I forget what. Yeah,
Yeah.
Papa Ball movie. Yeah,
Yeah,
I forget.
the Papa the Papa Ball movie, which also is a folk horror, right?
Right.
Technically, right? Yeah. Yeah, she shows up as one of the women that Navina possesses, if you will, right? And yeah, I mean she do she thing, right? But I assume that everybody, in this film are from the area itself. Well, with the exception of Numi, who is Swedish, right? And also speaking of that too, yes, it's a non-English film, right? So yeah, go in and you have to read subtitles. If you're not a fan of that, well, this is not for you, right? I didn't mind it at all, but at times I was wondering if like if the subtitles were correct, especially with like how they express certain words and express certain things. It just felt kind of weird. Like I don't know if it's just because it's a period piece or if it's just bad dubbing or whatever. I'm not sure, but I just assume that what we see text wise is exactly what's being said, right? The music is also really, really great as well, and so is the direction and cinematography as well too, right? There's a lot of like great, a lot of great like nature shots as well too. I remember one reviewer kind of compared it to like one like a Terrence Malick film, and I see where that critic is coming from because yeah, there's a lot of like just gorgeous looking shots of nature and whatnot, right? And it kind of works too in terms of just this character, this monster, so to speak, learning about the beauty and the darkness of the world, out there. You know what I mean? So it totally works like that, right? But in no way would I say is it some sort of like some horrific film that you'll be blocking your eyes. Sure, there are some genuinely unsettling moments here or there, but other than that, it's pretty straightforward. It actually surprised me at how straightforward it was. Like I thought it was gonna be real complicated and weird and kind of hard to understand. Like say Men, for example. And
Right.
honestly, I thought we was gonna get some kind of like maybe one day we might get some video essay on this, but I don't think so. I think that what they're going for thematically is very straightforward, right? And you really do get a sense of the world that this character, is a part of and how she responds. It makes a lot of sense, right?
You're right.
Um, but that being said, though, I would say if you are, yeah, I would say if you are a fan of folk horror, you should definitely check this one out, right? If you are a horror fan, you should check this out. But in no way is this some sort of like nail biting kind of show. It's more meditative. It's more like, yeah, it's just basically a monster. It's basically a witch pretty much learning about humanity. That's essentially what it is, right? And yeah, there's some bloody and some disturbing stuff here or there, but it's not to the point that's unwatchable, right? It's actually quite profound in a sense too, and actually like very, very well made, and I would say worth checking out as well too. So rating wise, I'm gonna give this a light 4 out of 5, man. I really enjoyed this. I didn't think I was gonna enjoy it as much as I did, but yeah, this was fantastic, man. And
Yeah.
I know this is one that's gonna go under a lot of people's radars, especially with the fact that it's a non-English speaking English language film, so to speak, right? But yeah, this is actually a really solid film, and I forgot to mention too, including this is actually a debut film, right? This is from
Okay.
Goran Stovsky, right? Forgive me if I got the name wrong, right? Yeah, this is his debut feature, and I thought that he did a great job here, man. So who knows? You might see him put out a E24 film in the near future, and it's kind of funny. Like this has E24 written all over it, but it's actually from Universal and Focus Features now. Remember
Right.
them
Okay.
were the ones who put out Northman. So I
Right.
guess I guess that's because I never really was familiar with Focus Features' filmography, right?
Well,
But I guess they are
they're
more
kind of
into
the
the
in
the
the
art crowd kind of vibe.
yeah. It's always much like with Foxlight. So Fox Searchlight is in the smaller film, kind of pseudo independent film direction of that, with a big studio doing small films. It's basically what it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, this was solid, man. So if you're looking for something provocative, something unique, something different, something special in your horror, then definitely check out You Won't Be Alone, man. This should entertain you, man, for what it is.
Yeah.
So sticking with that now. So it's funny that I have to talk about this movie here now. So while I was waiting for 3,000 Years of Longing to begin, I saw the trailer for You Won't Be Alone in the theater that I went to. And I
Okay.
was surprised, right? Because this is not the type of show that's You Would Be Alone. That is not the type of show that you would see in local theaters at all, right? I
Yeah.
mean, we've talked about this numerous times when it comes to more artsy films. They tend to stay in theaters for about a week and then
A
they just
week.
go.
And it
Yeah.
go.
And that is why I went out of my way to watch 3,000 Years Along. I tell
Yeah.
myself, all right,
Yep.
by Wednesday, the show
That
is
go
going
on.
to be gone.
Yep.
And it's funny that I went, because I went a couple days ago, right? That would be Saturday. So they have this deal now. It's up until August the 31st, which is our Independence Day. Yeah, so they basically have 2D movies. They basically charging $25 a ticket. I was like, all right, okay, cool. All right, cool. It's thank you for that. I don't have to spend an extra 10 to see this film, right? But yeah, like I said before, to be honest, I would be happy personally if this movie comes out, if this movie lasts for more than a week. And I'd be even happier if people who are actually listening to this do get around to seeing it theatrically. 'Cause I think it is definitely worth seeing theatrically, right? But at the same time, again, you know what I mean? It's just how we are. It's just how we're wired. We just
Right.
don't really click with movies like this. But it's a
But I
shame.
think it's such a strange, like, the promotion is strange, and it's like, okay, the only reason I give a shit about this is the two leads, but they didn't promote it at all. Like, it didn't seem to have any money for promotion, and I was like, that kind of weird, right? So anytime I see something like that, I just assume that it's some shit, and they just want to rush it out, because it's two big names as the stars. So it's like, all right, well, what's going on there? Anyway,
Agreed. Yeah. You're right. And it's unfortunate though because I know I actually have a feeling that this is not gonna play out well in the box office. That's
right,
the international box office, so to speak, right? Um, which is a shame. Again, you know what I mean. This given of the two leads, right? But also because of the director involved, which would be George Miller, right? And this is one
right.
reason I wanted to see
That's
this, right?
another reason. That's another reason I was like, okay, good, big director. He do arguably one of the biggest films of the last decade, Mad Max. What's going on? And they ain't hype it at all. It's like, what kind of weirdness is this? Anyway, yeah.
Exactly. Because I saw when the trailer dropped, right? I remember tagging you on it on Facebook. I think I remember compared it to, like I say, if I think I mentioned if Tassem had the chance to make a film about a gin, it would be like
Right.
this, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does have that sort of visual splendor like you would see with his films, right? You know, like The Fall, or what does he sell? I think the name of it is he Sell and The Fall, right? That's the two shows that I'm familiar with, if I'm not mistaken, right? But yeah, so I saw that, I was like, wait, George Miller do this? Like, and you're supposed to be putting out that Furiosa prequel with McGill and Attila Joy now,
Right,
but it's like,
right.
he do this. So it's like,
Right.
okay, cool.
Yeah, what's going on?
But
Yeah.
what I would say though, as someone who actually thinks that Fury Road is the best movie of the past decade, I actually have that as number
Right.
one.
Okay, yeah.
And I stand by that. Yeah, I was like, I was intrigued.
I don't agree with it, but I understand the point. Totally understandable.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I mean, I understand why you wouldn't have that up there as number one, right? But for me, it was just he took something that kind of just became, just kind of part of pop culture. Like, oh yeah, remember back in like the 80s, there was something called Mad Max, and he just breathed new life into that dread, and it was to the point
Right.
that the man like literally changed the face of action movies, dread, and I
Yeah.
was like just blown away. That's why I have it as number one, because of how much of a game changer that show was, right? And then it's George Miller, dread. Like, this man is like, now he's 77 years old, dread, right?
Right.
So in his 70s, he come and make one of the greatest action movies of all time, dread. That deserves praise, in my opinion, right? But enough about Mad Max, right? Let's talk about 3,000 Years of Longing, right? So what it's about, right? It centers on the character of Alethea Binney, right? She
Mhm.
is basically her field is narratology, right? She lives for the written word. She studied it and all that. She pretty much built a whole career off of it, right? And she's invited one day to do this lecture in Istanbul, right? But early on, it's established that she gets these like weird hallucinations, right? She sees these weird kind of demonic like looking beings, and she just kind of sees them just off and on, right? So And it even happens during a lecture, well, that same lecture that she does, right? Where she's talking about, fantasy and science and how it relates to, storytelling and all that kind of stuff. There's actually a pretty interesting moment where she have both like images from Marvel and DC comics like alongside each other. Talking about it's basically like
Yeah,
Marvel and DC hero. It's like pantheon of heroes basically. So she's just talking about
like and like this fella. Oh gosh, was a character from Glass. Samuel L. Jackson
or
character from
Samuel
Unbreakable.
Jackson character. It's
From
Glass,
Unbreakable.
right? Yeah, Mr. Glass. Mr.
Well,
Glass.
Mr. Glass, right? Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So yeah, that kind of career, that's his whole bag of history and stories, and yeah,
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So one day she just going about the town and whatnot, looking at the sights and whatnot, and she goes into this antique store, right? And she notices this particular bottle. It has this really unique, really cool looking design actually, right? And she buys it, right? And she carries it back to the hotel room, and through some circumstances, it opens, and well, a gin comes out, right?
right.
And well, gin being a genie, right?
Yeah,
And it just happens to be played by Idris Elba, right? And I forgot to mention too, technically this is one of the few films I've seen from him where he is the lead, though.
right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, which
I
is
yeah,
also a big deal and something they
more and
could have
more,
promoted
yeah,
with this movie.
yeah. The
But
more and more I think about it, he's a person who I find has been grossly underutilized in films, on average, in my opinion. He good in TV shows. We know him from that, but in average in films, I can't think of a film off the top of my head where he's like real good in, and they're utilizing properly, other than Suicide Squad. What else?
I would have said Pacific Rim, but you would disagree with me
Yeah,
with that.
yeah, I can't put it. Yeah, that
He
like
was great. He
I
was
like
great
I
in
like
our
I like
show, but...
Pacific Rim overall, but yeah, I had some issues with that. No, but
Oh,
like
okay. Right.
stuff like Star Trek and things, like yeah, they could have used him so much better. Anyway, whatever.
Oh yeah, he was in the Star Trek, right? I forget
Yeah,
that. Wow, right?
it was so forgettable.
I like it for what it was, right? But anyway, moving on, right? So yeah, so right off the bat, the Jinn is like, all right, I'm here to grant you three wishes, right?
Right.
So because of the who Alitia is, right? And I will talk about the whole hallucination stuff in a bit, right? But right off the bat, she does not buy into the whole three wishes thing, right? Because she's known these stories before. She knows that they usually don't end well, right? So she's skeptic, right? And it makes a lot of sense why she is, right? And well, the Jinn kind of understands that, right? So he kind of pretty much kind of tells her why he has to do it and pretty much why he ends up in that bottle, right? So what we get is like these series of stories. It's technically this section, I would say, this middle section of the film plays like an anthology of stories, right?
Right. It's like
And
kind of what is 1,001 Arabian Nights?
that's right. Yeah. It's,
Right.
it's sort of a Arabian Nights-esque kind of thing, right? Yeah, and it starts off with him in the Middle East and it kind of goes to Europe and all that kind of stuff, right?
Right.
But it always centers on him having or more or less being summoned and him being a jinn, and his purpose is to do the whole three wishes stuff. Now the person has to do it, right? But what it never plays out the way he expects it or the person itself expects it, right? So they usually like do two wishes and usually kind of like selfish. It's always like self-centered in a sense that, and they never work out, and he himself kind of gets roped into their lives somehow. Similar, I make the joke on Facebook. This is George Miller's The Sandman, because similar
Right.
to Morpheus, yeah, he kind of down bad, like throughout
Right.
these experiences, man. So you'll usually find out you'd always see this woman, you kind of fall for she, but things really work out. There's one instance involving King Solomon where he actually did sleep with a woman and stuff like that, and it went wrong there. And just all these down bad moments involving him, but it's just all these mishaps and just all these unfortunate things that happen as a result of these wishes, right? And it's in different moments in history, right? And this kind of leads to him meeting with Alicia now, right? So she kind of learns a lot more about him now through these stories, and I won't spoil anything. That I don't want to spoil anything beyond that, but I will say that she actually does the three wishes thing, and we see how that plays out. And I'll stop there, right? So I like I said before, I know the show is going to underperform at the box office, right? And it's a shame though, because I think that for what George Miller was going for, I think that this is actually a really great movie.
Right.
Um, but at the same time, it is challenging, right? I would say, how's the best way to describe it, boy? It's almost like George Miller wanting to do, it kind of reminds me a bit of not so much Pan's Labyrinth, but more like The Shape of Water, where
Okay.
it feels like it's something really, really deeply personal and passionate to the director, and he just wants to make it. But it feels so different compared to everything else that we saw before, right? So, like in Del Toro's case, yeah, Shape of Water, even though it had things that kind of remind you of Hellboy and Pan's Labyrinth, it does not feel like those films at all. It feels like something totally different, right? And look, the man won an Oscar out of that. He decided he ain't doing no more Pacific Rim movies, and he just move on with his life, right? But here, this one really does feel kind of deeply personal to George in a sense, right? And this is coming from somebody who hasn't even seen all of his films, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, this is easily one of the most unique films I've seen this year.
That's fine.
I've seen in a long while. I know this will be challenging for some viewers, especially those who kind of want things to be explained to them or want things to play out very straightforward. Because yeah, this show is not straightforward, right? If I so in terms of like criticism, right? But I will kind of come in as defending the show in a sense with that, right?
Right.
Yes, there are certain bits of these stories themselves, even the relationship between the two leads themselves, right? Where you could tell that things are left to be interpreted or left open, right? Now, some people might say that's bad writing, or it's just George just want to make that excuse to just be pretentious or to do something weird. But I don't think so, right? What this show really does very well, right? And this is why I love the whole anthology, the whole Arabian Nights anthology segment of the show here, right? Is that it kind of forces the viewer to view these things in a similar way to how Tilda Swinton's character does, where it's like,
Right.
all right, you as a jinn telling me all this, you telling me this to be true, but nah, this don't seem true at all, and it's not because it's
So it's,
fantastical, right?
so it's like unreliable narration or something like that.
It it's kind of like that. It's kind of half in a sense, right?
Okay.
So like
Right.
the way how the jinn describes it, it feels truthful, it sounds truthful, right? But when you really like watch this, like, nah. This is something you just make up, right? You
Right.
Because essentially all these stories are meant to be cautionary tales, right? So it almost feels like it's almost like a meta way of talking about the idea of storytelling, where you have to embellish certain things and make things a little outlandish, a little out of the ordinary to kind of get to the point, or should say, to rope the listener or the viewer in. That's how it feels like, right? But yeah, there are numerous moments during these stories where you're just kind of watching things and like, all right, this can't be real, right? So case in point, like they'll set it in certain historical moments, right, or with historical figures, right, or like case in point, they will talk about King Solomon and whatnot, right, real life person, right,
Yeah.
but then King Solomon have this particular musical instrument that's clearly magical, and apparently he have some magical powers or something. So you're like, wait, no, that's not true. You know what I mean? It's like that. But if you look at it as a fairy tale, it's like, all right, oh, well, it's a fairy tale, so okay, I should not take what I'm seeing too seriously, right? And
Right.
yeah, the show really goes out of its way to kind of tell you, yeah, don't take any of this seriously. Like, you really shouldn't, right? Um, but the stories themselves that they tell really do they really do have a strong message, right? And it's just really about power and selfishness, and well, it's also again about gender politics as well too, right? Just how selfish men could be, well, it's just selfish men could be, and how the patriarchy, is just power and how that could obsess someone, right? And yeah, just how the patriarchy pretty much affected women back then. So yeah, there's a lot of there's emphasis put centered on concubines and stuff like that, right?
Right.
So case in point, there's one particular guy who pretty much is assigned the task of becoming king, but so basically he's the brother of a king, right? But like, he knows that he has to produce a seed, he has to produce offspring there, so to continue the bloodline, but he kind of doesn't want to do it because he's oafish, right? So the queen himself, well, at least his mother, decide, here's what, I'm gonna just lock you into this room, I'm just gonna have all these attractive women of your choice, basically, and you just gonna get one of them knocked up, right? But because he is a guy who is just all about just wanting more. Slight spoiler here. He chooses these incredibly buxom women, and the moment where you see this, right? And yes, they're all naked. So I guess if you're into that, you kind of enjoy that moment. But I would I would say from a visual perspective, it kind of border on it remember the kind of stuff that Hodorowski does, where
Right,
like he's
right.
telling the story, but then he will throw in something real bizarre. Like he will show you some kind of like some person with no arms, or
Right,
some
right.
some naked chick with no legs or something like that. It's kind of like that, but it's meant to be outlandish, right? But when you think about it, it's all about excess, right? The guy wants more. So yes, I want the fullest woman I could find, and that's what he gets, right? And how that turns out, though, I don't want to spoil it, but it made for a particularly hilarious moment that this kind of sums up the kind of character he is, right? So yeah, essentially, it is about similar to the Sandman. It's about this spirit, this genie, more or less looking at humanity and its darkness, right? Just seeing the darkness in humanity, right? But at the same time, he will feel a kind of way for women who feel trapped, who feel lost, right? And yeah, he would just kind of have this affinity with them, right? And then at the same time, while he's telling these stories, Alicia, who she established early on, she gets emotions out of stories. She's pretty much a loner, right? She was married before. She has problems communicating with other people, but she always finds some sort of emotional, connection with stories, right? And that's how she's able to connect with the Jinn through these stories that he's telling, right? I thought that was great as well too. And I would just say also in terms of how this show is promoted, people are just gonna go in expecting this thing to be some kind of wild, crazy, insane visual, clusterfuck, right? But it's not that. It's actually like really deep and heartfelt in a sense, though. I really love
Right.
the idea of this skeptic talking to this spirit about why I do what I do and why she feels the way she feels, right? So
Right.
just like both characters kind of learning a lot from each other through the stories that they both tell, right? Because yeah, even Alicia has stories to tell of her own about her past and all that kind of stuff, right? But really, the cell is just about the jinn and all these weird, crazy stories, but they really do touch on a lot about what it means to be human, right? So in the process, he learns about humanity as well, too, right? In terms of acting, right? This is one of the best performances I've seen from Idris Elba.
Okay.
Period.
Well, I
Bar none,
mean,
bar none, bar none, bar none, right?
nice one.
And I mean, we've seen him in like hundreds of shows, right? Well, literally, right? But yeah, this is like I was just surprised at just what is just how he was just able to embody this character so well. He is just so believable as his character, and you really do feel a lot of sympathy for this guy too, right? Because it's like he just caught up in this like weird, unfortunate situation. It's like, all right, I just want to do my job. That's what that's my purpose, right? And like something always goes wrong, and then he just ends up being trapped in a bottle again. There's actually a great moment where he talks about how he feels being trapped in a bottle for years, right? Like
Yeah.
literally talk about being trapped for like about a century, and he talks about praying to his god, and then it's to the point he just start praying to other gods, right? Even Jehovah, right, looking for help, right? Then he gets fed up, he just almost wishes that he just kind of stays in that bottle and nobody finds him, right? And just so just the thought process behind that now, like just kind of talking about how it feels to be, a genie is pretty interesting, right? And also, I really love the character of Alicia, played brilliantly by Tilda, right? I love the idea of how she is skeptic, right? She is kind of calling the Jin out on his bullshit, but at the same time, kind of understand why he is who he is and why he feels the way he feels, right? And this is where I had to bring up the whole idea of her seeing these weird images, right? Now, it is admittedly one of those things that is kind of left unresolved. It's never really said why, right? But I think it's done purposefully in the film to show, okay, we just kind of have to justify why she would be in her hotel room talking to this genie. Why would she have this one-on-one chat with this guy, with this spirit, right? So you have to kind of justify early on that yeah, she's just pretty much used to seeing weird shit. She's seen that before. And because she has this mind that is pretty much all about stories and storytelling, it kind of makes sense too.
And
It kind of
it's
feels
not
like quite
like
the fancy in a sense.
and it's not like he's a victim of her imagination, a victim. he's a figment of her imagination or anything like that. That's it
Exactly.
fit. Right. Okay.
That's right. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah. Um, Visually though, this is just a gorgeous, just a sumptuous looking film, man. I was just so glad that I was able to see this in theaters, man. And I will say there are a couple of moments, a couple of VFX related moments where you could
Yeah.
tell is green screen stuff. So case in point, there's a scene where Tilda is confronted for the first time by the Jinn, right? And there's a moment where she kind of turns her back on him, right? And she closes her eyes. And I can kind of tell that, yeah, she is standing in front of a green screen, right? Because, yeah, Idris Elba's character is to the background. In this case, he is large, right? So he starts off as being large now, and then he turns more human sized though, because he kind of understands
right.
about humans and blah blah blah, right? And you can kind of tell that, yeah, they just kind of slap on that background and she's there in front, right? Also, I know George Miller has this kind of thing about slowing, more or less speeding up shots. So there's one particular zoom out where it was sped up, but it just kind of look off. It just kind of look awkward though, because
Yeah.
it's a VFX shot, but how he zoom out of it just kind of look weird. It just kind of took me out of it, right? But it was actually one of the more humorous moments of the show, right? I would say, yeah, this is a darkly funny film. Yeah, I was like chuckling at it, but it's not like a laugh out loud show. It's just how darkly humorous it is. Because yeah, I mean, it's these fairy tales, but it's all about, yeah, it starts off well enough, but it gets dark and weird and trippy, and then it just does not end the way it does. And there's all these weird circumstances, it's just enough for you to just laugh at, right? You really do feel sorry for this poor Ginger and what he goes through, right? Um and lastly, I love how where he's at in this modern world, right? And that essentially what the third act is about, right? And how he kind of understands, technology and all that kind of stuff. He's fascinated by these things, right? I thought that was like really smart, right? In terms of like comparing science with fantasy, right? It's similar to like what you was talking about with that lecture that I mentioned early on, right? And just this idea of, well, this fantastical character in the modern world and trying to adjust to that, right? And you see how that plays out, right? But I would spoil anything beyond that, right? And at the end of the day, this is actually like a pretty like affectionate film. Right? I didn't expect
Right.
it. Like I thought it was
Nice.
gonna be like really dark and messed up, but no, it's actually like really warm and sweet and really has a lot to say about. Well, I should say the main theme of it is love, right? Okay, yeah, at the end of the day, that's what the Jinn is looking for, but he can't find it. Like literally 3,000 years he's been looking for it. That's all I'll say. And where it ends is like, yeah, this works, right? This actually works. Now, I will say, just in closing, the end does feel slightly rushed. That's all I'll say. But it's almost like all right, like it's a fairy tale, so we kind of have to end it on a somewhat optimistic note. But in the real world, it would play out like that. So, in other words, you kind of force to suspend your disbelief just a little bit for you to accept the ending. But I accepted the ending. I thought that the ending was really, well thought out and very, very, very heartfelt and sweet, actually, in my opinion, right? Yeah. So, in closing, this is not gonna be everyone cup of tea, and I just knew that from the moment I saw the trailer for this, right? But I do see that this is one that, if you are interested, you should definitely check out. And I actually do see this showing up in my best of list. Like it's really, really good. It's not perfect, eh? Keep that in mind. It's not a perfect, flawless film, right? I would say there are a couple of narrative missteps here or there, or just stuff that kind of just left out there in the open, and then also some, visual stuff that kind of take you out to the show. And there are a few moments, I must say, keep saying a couple. There are a few moments where it kind of borders on, I just kind of want to have this stuff here because I'm George Miller and I'm just being weird. I could get with it because I'm George Miller. It's like that. You know what I mean? But still, I got where this guy was coming from with this. It is outlandish. It is over the top. It is admittedly silly. I talk about the story aspects of it, the fairy tale aspects of it, right? But at the same time, they have, there's a lot of depth to the stories. There's a lot of depth to the dialogue and the conversations being had, and just the themes being addressed in this film here. There's a lot for you to digest and for you to soak in with this, right? So if you don't get it the first time, I totally understand. Like there's still a few things in it that I don't completely understand, but the majority of it I absolutely got. I more or less I got where George is coming from with this movie, right? But it's still not gonna be for everyone. Some people might think it's just pretentious or just weird for the sake of being weird. But nah, I think that George just really wanted to make something special and unique, and that's exactly what he did, man. And the end result is just easily one of the most unique films I've seen this year, and one that I will definitely remember by years end, man. So rating wise, I'm gonna give this a strong 4 out of 5, man. If you can see it theatrically, I do strongly recommend that you do, but again, I'm really not sure what the shelf life of this movie will be, in terms of of it being screened theatrically, man. It's a shame too. I'm not talking about budget and the actors and all that kind of stuff. It's just the imagination, the storytelling that went into this film, man. It's a shame that people will just kind of dismiss this as just artsy nonsense, or just think that it's just this over glorified passion project from George Miller. And I really don't think it is. I really do think that this is something that he really wanted to make. It's something that really meant a lot to him, and you could see it literally with every frame of this movie, man. You don't see movies like this these days, man. I really champion films like this, right? And it's coming from George Miller of all people, right? So
Yeah.
that's amazing, right? I do hope that we get that Furiosa film very soon, but I guess he just had to take a break and get this out of his system, man. I'm glad that he did, man. So again, I really do recommend that people check it out, but I would say if you're still iffy about it, check out the trailer. If the trailer does nothing for you, yeah, just skip it. But if you're really intrigued and you really want to see what this whole 3,000 years along is about, yeah, by all means, definitely check this out, man.
Nice.